Hello everybody, Andy here again. I thought I'd tell you a little anecdote about my time when I was at Hastings Rock doing some DJing, as I said, and it's another example of the power of saying yes, I suppose, another one of those sort of ideas that's come out and I've been talking about quite a lot. Whilst I was there, I did a Saturday lunchtime show, and the last show that I did, I got there and I received a phone call in the studio. Saying from a guy I actually knew, but asking if I wanted to interview someone on air. There was a Black Horse Music Festival, which I spoke about before, was going on that weekend, and the particular band were playing, and they wanted to know if I wanted to speak to the front band. Now, that particular guy was a guy from a band from the 80s who were very popular both here in the UK and in America. The band were called The Alarm. I don't know if anybody knows them. I was a big fan of theirs at the time, and the guy was a guy called Dave Sharp, who was one of the guitarists in the band, and he's now formed a new band called the Hard Travellers, with some very well-known people actually, and they were headlining the Saturday night. And the idea behind their band is sort of quite an American sort of feel, and they're sort of trying to bring back the spirit of Woody Guthrie, a great American. And if there's any, I don't know if you know who he is, but if there's any Americans here who don't know who Woody Guthrie is, you ought to be ashamed of yourself. And as it happens, I'm actually reading Woody Guthrie's autobiography at the moment. He sadly died sort of about 40 years ago now, and they're trying, but he had a great sort of in touch with the people and songs about the people and that sort of thing. And they're trying to get back to that sort of feel about music, a bit more of a personal side to it. So a bit of trepidation. I thought, oh no, he's going to ruin my show. You get those things, sort of a big interruption to the show. You know, what am I going to talk to this guy? I'd never done an interview with someone like that before, and certainly not live on air anyway. But I said yes, and there you go. So Dave came into the studio and we had a great chat about the Alarm and the new stuff as well, the Hard Travellers, Woody Guthrie, all that sort of thing. And it was great from my perspective to actually talk to someone who has lived my sort of dream, I suppose, who's been there, who's sort of made music his living, had a relative success with it both in America and over here, and sort of talked one-to-one with someone who knew what I was talking about and I could relate to what he was saying. So that was great. The interview went very well, and it was very well received. I got home after the show, and then I took a phone call from a guy who was attached to the band, and they said, we've been having a chat, you know, since the interview, been talking about it, and we wanted to know if you'd like to come up to the show tonight and interview every single member of the band, but individually, as I said, because they're all sort of well known in their own fields. But we want you to do it on camera. We want you to do it on video, and then we can use it possibly for publicity purposes, put it on YouTube, that sort of thing. And you think, whoa, you know, great, thanks for asking, you know, and all that. But it's another sort of real trepidation thing there. Well, this is another step upwards, you know. But I said yes, as you do. So I went along and took a friend of mine who's another one of the DJs who very interested in music, and one of the people in particular. So we met Dave, we met him in the pub, had a beer, and we had a chat, and we were just sort of talking, and the guy was filming it as we were just talking about music, just talking about his inspirations. He lived in New Orleans for 10 years, and all that sort of taught him, I suppose. I've been to New Orleans a long time ago, and we were talking about sort of the influence of America on music and Britain on American music, etc., and that whole thing. As I said, once again, it's great to be able to talk one-to-one with someone who's done it, who's been there, who's lived it, and it was great that we got on, and I think we were sort of had a mutual respect for each other in that way. Another guy we spoke to was a guy called Henry McCulloch. And you may know the name, but he was in Joe Cocker's band at Woodstock, so it shows you how long he's been around. A great guitarist, played with just about everybody you can think of, including Paul McCartney and Wings, and he was also on Dark Side of the Moon. You may remember in Dark Side of the Moon, one of those great albums that's sort of still very, very popular now, still voted one of the sort of best albums of all time, and quite rightly so, I think. And you've got the speaking parts which take place sort of throughout the album, and I think it's at the end of Money, there's a particular bit where this guy says, oh, I was really drunk at the time, in a sort of an Irish accent. Well, that was Henry McCulloch, and he was telling us the story of how that happened, so I might as well tell you that now. He was in Abbey Road Studios with Paul McCartney, I think Wings, recording. In one of the adjacent studios, Pink Floyd were making Dark Side of the Moon. They came in one day and said, look, we've got these speaking parts we want to do, and they actually wanted Paul McCartney to do the speaking parts, which you've heard. But Paul said, I'm too busy, and he said to Henry, why don't you go and do it? And I said, yeah, great. So he went in there, and how they did it, they had these cards, little sort of cards which were put down, sort of face down on the desk sort of thing, and then they just turned over the card, there's a question written on the card, you know, and you had to first, you know, off the top of your head, your reaction to that particular question. And Henry McCulloch's particular answer to that question was, I don't know, I was really drunk at the time. And that sort of gone down. They thought that was great. So a little anecdote there, but another one of those things that just by saying yes, you never know where it's going to lead, and hopefully, you know, these things can lead further on. We spoke to a couple of other people from the band as well. All great people to talk to, all very open, very nice to talk to, sort of a wealth of experience, a wealth of musical knowledge and talent there, and it would have been great to have been pursued it a bit further, but unfortunately time was our enemy on that occasion. I'm hoping to get some video of the of those particular interviews, and if I'm allowed to, maybe I can put some of it onto my site on YouTube. As I said, I do actually have an MP3 of the show that I did with the interview as well, so that's great to keep that as well. So just thought I'd do that very quickly. Probably isn't very quickly, but just sort of another one of those things, little anecdote from my point of view, and one of those things, as I said, that if you say yes to one thing, it can lead on to something else, and never expect it to happen within the hour, but you know where I'm coming from. Anyway, thanks for your time, and I'll speak to you again soon. Goodbye. Hello everybody, Andy here again. I was just let's just start that again, I think. Dear oh dear. The king of one take videos cocked it up again.